KFSR and CMAC present the Central Valley Ledger, a public affairs program featuring stories from all over the Central Valley with Sevag Tateosian, 90.7 KFSR.
I'm your host, Sevag Tateosian. Welcome to the Central Valley Ledger. We're recording out of the beautiful CMAC studios in downtown Fresno. Our guest this week is Chef Varouj, a local chef and lifestyle expert. Welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me.
Tell us a little bit about yourself because, years ago I saw you around town and for a while you weren't in town.
Correct.
So,
I have the tendency to go and come back, just like most people do.
And we're glad you're back, by the way.
Thank you.
So tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I'm a founder of Indulge Right Foods and realfoodismedicine.com. I'm a chef by training, obviously. That's been my background for 26 years now. But most people, in fact, in the Valley know me by the business, either as a caterer or as the restaurateur, as the chef. But what most don't know is in the past about 7 or 8 years, I've kind of took a different journey when it comes to food. I was kind of forced to some extent to do it because of my health issues. So that kind of took a journey and started looking at the food as from different perspectives, different aspects, right? As the medicinal aspects of food, the nutritional aspects of food, which it took me about, so it's, again, like I said, about 8 years journey into learning more about food, how it affects on your health, and really getting into deep dive into the whole, the side effects of it, the nutritional benefits, and diving into really all the science behind it, all the up-to-date, the latest researches, the publications, which we all have access to, but you got to dig deep a little bit, which led me ultimately creating the Indulge Right Foods and actually the realfoodismedicine.com to support people in their journeys.
Let me stop you there and ask you about the restaurant business. And I'm smiling because a lot of people think opening a restaurant, they're going to make a lot of money. It's this really sexy, you're a restaurant owner. You did it.
I did.
And you worked hard at it.
You have no choice.
Tell us a little bit about your experience as a restaurant owner. Is it that glamorous and get rich fast type of business?
It's everything but get rich fast thing. There's a lot of glamour in it, but also it's also a labor of love for many. Like I could get lost in the restaurant business because I enjoy food, I enjoy playing with food. But ultimately from a business perspective, it's all different. It's not as most people think about it. So that's kind of, you got a lot of long hours and really not much of pay, ultimately.
And the markup of food is something that, you can't really, you can obviously play with the numbers with food, but the markup is not as ludicrous as other things.
Mm-hmm. It's not, because if you think about it, we're having this discussion yesterday with one of my clients. If you think about the food cost or even the markups, like pricing, if you go out today, you're paying pretty much more or less the same thing for what you paid back then. Maybe, I don't know, $1, $2, $3 more, right, in most cases. But the labor cost went up so much higher. The cost of food, it almost doubled. So your markup just keeps on shrinking in the restaurant business, at least. So that's the challenge of the food industry. And that's why a lot of them go out of business very quick.
So you're a chef, but you're also a lifestyle expert.
Correct.
Healthy lifestyle expert. Tell us a little bit about what we could be doing in our everyday life to get healthy.
So there's a lot of things you could do, and that's basically where my journey took me into it, right? When I started learning more about this whole, the other side of the food, if you would, right? The nutritional part, the medicinal properties of food, not only changed my own life, like I was your typical with a bunch of pains, with joint pain and back pain and neck pain and you name it. Not only I've changed my life, I also lost 25 pounds, but allowed me to also change people's life from that perspective, right? Helping others to get a healthier lifestyle, creating a lifestyle that they could sustain on the long term. I think that's the important key in here, is to create that lifestyle where you could really sustain it and understand and have a comprehension of it, that you could really live with it on the long term. And there's a lot of things you could do, and throughout the whole thing, it's really, let's see, there's many aspects of it. That's one thing I've learned, that there's a lot of aspects when it comes to lifestyle, right? Especially if you think about it from the getting healthier perspective, dieting perspective, right? So food is a major part of it, but just one piece of the puzzle. So there's so many other things involved. Now, if you were to change about, if you were trying to get healthier, there are obviously a lot of things you could do. Now, everybody's in a different place in their health, right? Some might be who are just starting, have never hit the gym so far, and some who have been there and done that and haven't seen any results. And there's also obviously reasons for that. And other people like your sister she achieved a tremendous milestone.
And so for the audience members who don't know the story, who you referenced, my sister has lost 170 pounds.
Exactly. So that's
in a span of
deal.
about 2 years. Complete difference in her body. A person is still the same person.
Absolutely.
But it took a lot of dedication and hard work and exercise for her to get there.
Absolutely. So you have to take a lot of things. I think that's one thing you said, you nailed it on the head. Dedication. It requires commitment. Obviously now, going back to your initial question, right, what can we do? Sometimes it just takes small little steps, right? Might be as simple as, if you have never, gone to the gym for the last 2 years, let's say, obviously going to the gym, it's going to be a pain for you. It's not going to happen. Pretty soon you're going to give up, right? But that might require you to just go around the block a couple times. That's it, simply, right? And then every week you could add a little bit more to it. Maybe you could go around the block twice, or increase it, or you start going to the gym a little more. It might be as simple as drinking an extra glass of water. It might be as simple as eliminating sugars from your diet, right? Or if you are used to, let's say, which most people are typically used to drinking several sodas, whether it's diet or it's not, right? Or any sugary drinks, energy drinks, and so forth. Eliminating those could be a big step for some people.
And I want to stop you and ask you about this, because a while back someone told me, just because the soda is diet, and this isn't a criticism or anything of the soda industry, that's not what we're going after by this question, but just because something is diet doesn't mean it's healthy. What say you?
Correct. Absolutely right. It just, I think diet as we know it right now, for the past at least, let's say 40, 50 years, has nothing to do with the meaning of the diet itself, right? So we approach diet nowadays about, let me just lose some pounds. For example, what's the first thing comes to your mind if you say, well, I'm going to go on a diet?
Stop eating, lose weight.
Stop eating, lose weight, but that's how long it's going to last for you if you were to do that, right? But if you take it from a different perspective, if you turn it into a lifestyle, now all of a sudden that negativity of the diet, which you're automatically going, wait, I'm going to have to restrict myself. I'm going to have to deprive myself. I'm going to stop, doing what I'm doing. I'm going to start counting calories. I'm going to start, limiting what I can and can't do. And my social life is going to be affected by it. And I could go on and on and on, right? But the minute you turn that into a lifestyle, now all of a sudden something kind of lifted. That whole thing is no longer about limitation, deprivation, right? And oftentimes I get, when I work with my clients, I get initially, when I first start working with them, I'll get this question, do I have a cheat date? I think that's the stupidest thing they ever came up with. I mean, seriously, why would you have a cheat date? The fact that you have a cheat date presupposes that you're going to do something wrong, or you're depriving yourself of something, right?
Right.
Or you're not satisfied, you're not fulfilled. You could put this in whatever meaning you want, right? But I think if you eliminate that, if you look at it from a lifestyle perspective, you no longer have to cheat. You could indulge, right? And absolutely, you don't have to cheat. There's no need to cheat.
And this is a perfect segue to one of the questions I want to ask about. Some people who go on diets completely restrict themselves. No more ice cream, period. No more soda, period. No more fried food, period. Is that appropriate? I mean, if I start a diet and I only have a little bit of ice cream, am I cheating? Am I doing something completely wrong?
It depends on what it is. So also it depends from your goal, right? Now, once again, going to a lifestyle, you don't have to worry about the dieting part of it, right? But you also want to, if you want faster results, better results, right? You want to create that, you want to replace some of the habits with better habits, better alternatives, right? So if you focus on the anti-inflammatory foods, right? Once you eliminate certain foods from your system and replace them with others, then you won't feel, even if you, let's say one day you decide, yeah, I'm going to have some ice cream. Unless, of course, you have allergies to lactose, or I'm going to have a slice of cake. Unless you have, gluten allergies, then that would be a dumb thing to do. But obviously, then hey, I'm not, I'll have this now, but I'll fix something else later on. I'll deal with it later, right? Of course, if you have, I have some people that go like they want to test it, which I did personally when I first was diagnosed, right? I wanted to know, like, I didn't believe that gluten would be my issue. So I went back and tested it. Like, hey, I'm going to have some gluten now. But pretty much next day, everything came back. All my symptoms kind of reappeared.
So I know we're getting off topic, but this is great because we're going to eventually get to this topic. Since we're there, let's talk about it. Gluten. You found out that you're sensitive to gluten. What was that doing?
So let me answer this by going a little back, kind of giving a background about what gluten is and kind of more of the, most people are familiar about gluten or as celiac, right? We've known about celiac since World War II. But what's new nowadays is the non-celiac gluten sensitivity, right? So the difference is basically celiac affects you on interintestinal levels. So it affects your gut, right? Damages your gut system, your digestive system. The non-celiac, on the other hand, is extraintestinal, what's referred to as extraintestinal. So ultimately, it could damage anything in your body. It attacks anything in your body. It could be autoimmune response, it could be sensitivity, or it could be as an allergy, right? But it could be any part of your body. In my case, it was, I had joint pain, I had knee pain, I had back pains, I used to get headaches, I used to get cold sores up to the bazooka, and it could, the symptoms are so long.
Okay, and let's go into what gluten foods. What do we mean by gluten? So is a piece of bread gluten, or what's gluten?
Gluten is basically the protein peptide that's present in wheat, rye, barley.
The good stuff.
Depends how you look at it. And there's some cross-contamination, some other issues, right? Let's say oat could be one of them. So what basically that's the part of it that affects your body, your immune system, or your depending on what part of it, if you're celiac or non-celiac. But recent studies from one of the professors up at Stanford, Alessio Fasano, he mentioned basically there's no human being that could digest the gluten peptides. You might not have issues with it, but your body is not adapted to break it down completely, right? So that's what you react to ultimately in case of gluten. But the most important part of it, I think it's the easiest part to understand, is it's an inflammatory food for human beings.
So what made you take the test? So I presume you used to have a bakery, you used to have a restaurant, you used to not worry about gluten, you used to eat gluten, I would imagine, with a restaurant and a bakery. What made you say, you know what, maybe I should check myself if I'm...
No, I didn't. No, I didn't. So yeah, absolutely. I lived on carbs. Breakfast, lunch, dinner. A quick meal for me was pasta.
And a delicious meal, by the way. I love
pasta.
It
is, absolutely. But it's not good for you. But lifestyle, you could have it and deal with it. But for me, it was more about the pain, right? I used to go to the chiropractor about 3 days a week. I used to pop pills up to the bazooka, because my back would hurt, and just pop a pill. I had acid reflux, I would pop a pill, right? So my solution was grabbing a pill. But it came to a point where my chiropractor, who's actually one of the doctors in here, she's actually also a naturopath and nutritionist as well. So finally she's like, okay, I could adjust you any day you want, anytime you want, but that's not going to go away. So she was after me for about a year and a half. Talk about being stubborn, right? And I didn't want to change it because obviously I was in the business, so I can't not eat gluten and sell you gluten, right? Or sell you breads and not eat it. Besides, I had to know what how it tasted like,
Of course,
and I
you
have
own
to try
a
it.
restaurant.
Exactly.
You have to
I need
know that the
what
food
it
tastes
is.
good. Yeah.
Exactly. So, but finally she goes like, I could do whatever you want, but it's not going to change. Just give it a shot. The funny thing is, we actually used to do cooking classes together for her patients. They were gluten-free, dairy-free, sugar-free.
Oh, interesting.
And they were mostly desserts. So I did it because I enjoyed doing it. It was challenging, but I also noticed how much of difference it made in her patient's life. Because back about 10 years ago, gluten-free wasn't as first available, nor tasty.
Nor
Some of them were
sexy. I want to say the
horrible.
word. I want to say the word sexy in a way that right now, like gluten free is everywhere and it's popular. Like, back
is.
10, 15 years ago, I had no idea. I still don't know what exactly gluten is. But as we go in time, we're finding out that more and more people are coming out and saying, hey, gluten is causing all these issues.
University of Chicago, their celiac department, a couple of years ago, released, I had posted on my Facebook a couple times earlier this year, I think. They came up with about 300 different diseases that are related to celiac or non-celiac gluten sensitivity.
Wow, that's
300.
a lot.
And most of them are very familiar to what we do, right? Some of them we all suffer from.
I don't want to ask because
don't
I know
wanna
what
know.
you're going to say. The bread and the rice
Well, of
and
course.
stuff like that.
Well, rice is not actually. Rice is gluten-free.
Cool.
So you got the bread, which is wheat. You got rye and barley. So most of Armenians' foods are out of the question.
Yeah, yeah.
But besides that, though, it's the reason why we're seeing this kind of mushrooming of the gluten-free products. Obviously, there's the demand, but also we've come a long way with the testings. Like I didn't do the testing because I felt it, right? When I got off gluten, my pain went away. Like I stopped skiing when I'm in my 20s because there was this sharp pain that would just shoot straight to my brain, right? Now I know it was the nerve ending that's sending signals, right? But it felt like paralyzing pain. It lasted a second, but it felt like forever. And those disappeared. I ended up, cycling 100 miles up in Tahoe for LLS, had no problem. But the minute I had I think some stupid spinach dip too, there was some flour mix in it, which don't ask me why, but it's there.
So I want to ask you, and it sounds like the answer to this question is yes, but so something as small as like a tablespoon of
That's a great question,
a
actually.
dip. Because, sometimes when we are at a party, for me, it's wine. I get very bad headaches if I drink wine.
Sulfite, probably.
But sometimes, you're at a party, you're having a good time, things are good, you're with friends and family, you're like, you know what, I'm going to have a little bit of wine or whatever it is and not think that that's going to impact you. Well, guess what? It hits. So you're telling me even though a little bit of something can harm you.
So when it comes to gluten, yeah, especially if you're celiac or you have allergies or your sensitivity have progressed to a point where you have kind of antibodies for it, right? So yeah, it doesn't matter if it's just a cross-contamination, like your bread touched your meat, or there's a crumb in your salad. That's enough for your body to, it's just like you take, let's say peanut allergies, perfect example, right? Nowadays, I think you can't even have them in schools because of the airborne. We'll think about it the same way with gluten allergies or celiac disease. You could send somebody to the hospital because of that, right? So yeah, when it comes to that, that's the reason why I said earlier, as long as you don't have allergies to something in your lifestyle, you could just have, a little bit here and there and it won't change anything, right?
So a lot of people have like pain in the knee, in the back, headaches and stuff like that that are non-gluten related. So when would you say...
Let me stop you there.
Uh-oh.
How do you know it's non...
Speaks the expert. Okay, go ahead.
How do you know it's non-gluten related?
Well, I don't know, so good point there.
Right.
But the reason for my question is, when should we say, okay, I'm going to go get tested for gluten? And what does that test even look like?
I'd say actually nowadays it's a simple blood work. Probably not everybody does it in here nowadays, but because insurance doesn't cover for it and so forth. But there's a lot of practitioners in here, that are certified gluten practitioner or lots of naturopaths that run it. They do it. Some of the doctors do it as well. So it's just a blood draw. You get results. It tells you exactly what part of your body is affecting, everywhere from your brain to your toes. And when I said your brain, actually that's kind of one of the things that stopped me. That called on my track. Because I used to have, I did not know it until then, obviously, but I had brain fog all my life. I was your typical ADD child. Back home, there was no counseling. Unfortunately, to some extent, we didn't have all, just here, pop the drug.
And back home, I have to stop you. Back home, you mean where?
Syria, overseas, right?
Was this stuff talked about even over there?
No, we didn't know any of that stuff. But that's what I learned when I was doing all my research and studying and finding out about this whole gluten thing, right? The more you learn, the more I've learned, the more I've realized, wait a second. Yeah, so-and-so had these side effects all his life. So-and-so, blah, blah, blah. But for me, I had brain fog, which I did not know. I used to joke saying if I wasn't smart, I would have not become a chef, I would have become a doctor, right? But I did not know that my brain fog was related to eating gluten. But as a child, though, I think this is very important because it's very easy for us nowadays, especially, to hand pills to a kid just because they're being a kid, right? Oh, they have ADD, ADHD. Well, guess what? You feed that kid sugar all day long or carbs, whether it's gluten or not, what do you expect is going to happen? Basic science. That kid's going to burn that. And you expect him to sit still and do whatever? It's not going to happen, right? But for us, it was, the yardstick ruled the classroom.
Yeah.
So I was always in trouble for that. I was always in trouble. But my main thing at that point became, because my dad died of Alzheimer's at a young age, at 65.
Sorry to hear about that. I never knew that.
Years ago, though. It's been about 19 years now. But, that was the point where it's like, okay, wait. When it comes to messing up with your brain, I don't care if you have the history or not, that you need that no matter what you're doing, right? So that's where the extraintestinal or non-celiac gluten sensitivity comes into importance, right? You have brain fog. You could have, we feel bloated. Oh, I'm so full, I ate so much. Oftentimes it's not about eating so much, but how your body is reacting, right? Now, that could be gluten related or may not be. That could be dairy issue. There could be other issues too, right? But oftentimes we've come up with these terminologies that will masquerade these things. Like, oh yeah, I'm just getting old. Perfect example. I'm getting old. Well, we're in our 50s now, or whatever it might be. But we came up with this BS stuff just to cover up with the facts. But if you think about it, your body is, it's amazing what our body is, how it's made, right? We are God's highest creations. All this time, and by the way, it's God for me, it could be whatever, somebody else, that's fine with me. To this date, we're still learning about our body. To this date, we're still learning how wrong we were about X subject versus the other. Our brain, the latest thing is our intestinal flora, right? The gut bacteria. So far, it's like we're learning something new every single day about our health. So just think about how complex our body is, right? And our body has its way of healing and doing its own thing if we allow it, if we give it a chance, right?
So do you, now that I assume you've cut all gluten or something like that?
Yeah, absolutely. Don't mess around with it.
And we're running out of time this week on the program,
Okay.
but I'm glad that I've got you for part 2 next because we can keep going into this topic.
Awesome.
You've completely cut gluten.
100%.
Do you feel better?
100%.
So it's not a joke. Like you're
No,
not just,
it's not a joke.
You're not just saying it because it was hard to cut gluten and you just want to make yourself feel better.
No, absolutely. I'm a pastry chef by background. That's my love affair.
A pastry chef,
That's
not
my
having
love
gluten.
affair. All right? So for me, that's why it took me about 1.5 years to say, okay, I'll give it a shot. That's why it took me, so long. But once I went, I stopped skiing. I stopped playing soccer. For us, it was soccer, right? Because of the pain, my joint pain, my back pain. For a long time, I said, oh, it's the job. I'm lifting, sacks of flour.
That's what I was thinking, maybe
I'm
it's the
sauteing
job.
constantly. I'm in and out of the freezer to the, hellhole, like in the kitchen in the middle of the summer and so forth. So you have all these excuses, right? But ultimately, when everything clears up, and when you eat it, reintroduce it, and you get all the side effects immediately, that's when you know you got something.
So how can we test it? So let's say that I've got knee pain and back pain, and I'm wondering what's the cause. So is your recommendation for me to stop gluten one day and see, is it one day or is it?
You might want to do it for a little longer than one day. Let's say a couple weeks, you'll start feeling it. But I would go further than gluten though. That's the key. It's, why do you have knee pain? Ultimately, it's inflammation.
We're getting old, right? No,
yeah, exactly, right? That's the easy way out. But it's ultimately inflammation. So something in your system that's causing inflammation. I don't care if it's referred to as autoimmune disease or rheumatoid arthritis or whatever that might be. There's a root cause for that. And based on the studies, based on the science, based on the plethora of research out there, right, that are published in the medical journals of whatever you name it, there's always a cause. There's always an environmental factor involved, right, besides your genetics.
So in part 2 of the interview, which will air next week, we'll continue to dig into this topic as well as other topics. But I want to let our audience members get in touch with you. Mm-hmm. Tell us how they can contact you. Are you in social media?
I am on social media, or they could go to my website, which is www.realfoodismedicine.com, and I have a bunch of recipes in there. They could sign up to get more free recipes. They could reach me in there as well, and I'm also on Facebook as well, like everybody else is today.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Varouj Kachichian, and I'm pretty engaged in there as much as I can. I post all this information that we've talked about.
And good food basis. Too. I follow you, by the way.
Some good food as well. So I just posted something that I had before I got over here. So I don't know if you saw it or not, but
not yet. But I will definitely watch
for
it.
So
Chef Varouj, we're out of time this week on the program, and we'll be back for part 2 of this to air next week. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
That's all for this edition of the Central Valley Ledger. Thank you to the volunteer crew that made this production and every production possible. The team's name is in the credits right after this program. Thank you also to our guest, Chef Varouj, for taking the time to come to the beautiful CMAC studios in downtown Fresno. Thank you to our audience members listening to this broadcast on 90.7 FM KFSR Fresno, and to those watching on CMAC, the Community Media Access Collaborative channels, Comcast 93 and AT&T 99. We truly hope you enjoyed the program this week. Tune in next week to a new edition.
KFSR and CMAC present the Central Valley Ledger every Sunday morning at 11:30. For a complete program schedule, visit kfsr.org.